Wow, stories.
I've always read these Reddit threads, but never thought I'd be the one posting. But I honestly and desperately need advice, and a fresh set of eyes, if you will. Some backstory is needed first. I've recently gotten married to my husband. We're almost at 6 months, so it's pretty fresh. And while I do absolutely love him and want to be married to him, I'd be lying if I said our marriage wasn't a little unorthodox. We only knew each other about 6 months prior to us getting married, and the reason we decided to tie the knot so quickly was out of necessity almost. You see, when we started dating, we both fell for each other pretty quickly and found we had much in common and wanted the same things in life. So we were talking about marriage very early on into dating. He has 2 young daughters, 5 and 4, from a previous marriage that he has sole custody of. And prior to our marriage, he was taking care of them with the help of his mother. While we were dating, we would regularly take them out to places like the zoo, trampoline park, etc. He works a job that allows him to work for 2 weeks and then be off for a week. So our dates would usually happen during that off week. He wanted to take a road trip with me to visit his dad a few states away on one of his off weeks, so I requested time off from work for that week. This also happened to be a week that the kids' mom had the girls, meaning he didn't have to leave them with his mom. We get on the road and he gets a call from his mom. It lasted a few minutes, and she basically told him she couldn't help him care for his girls anymore. She has bad arthritis that makes it hard for her to get around, and that he would need to make other arrangements for the girls' care. This story is getting to be longer than I intended it to be and kinda all over the place, but please bear with me. Anyways, as you can guess, that's when we decided it's best to get married now, as we were already planning on getting married later anyway, and also because of a clause in his divorce with the girl's mom. It's a no-shack clause that prohibits either party from having a member of the opposite spouse live with them for the well-being of the children. That clause lasts a year. So basically, we would have to date for a year before we were able to move in together without being married, which I was fine with. I had bought my own house a while ago and was living comfortably with my 3 dogs, and he had a rent house. So yeah, during that trip, we decided to stop in Vegas and get legally married so I could help him with his girls, since that was the plan in the long run. I had to quit my job to be their full-time caregiver, which was quite the culture shock for me. I had always worked for everything I had, and now, suddenly, I was a jobless, stay-at-home mom of these girls I barely knew. I went from having a pretty decent career at a job I'd been at for 6 years to having to ask my husband if it's okay to get myself a coffee. And while I'm not that materialistic, I was used to buying myself whatever I wanted, to a point, of course. I wasn't rich by any means, but I supported myself, had a house and car payment, my 3 big dogs, and had money left over to save and spend how I wish. The first month was the hardest, as I was finding out just how much he did around the house. His mother was doing almost 100% of the housework, cooking, parenting, etc., even during his off week. He would argue that he works and shouldn't have to come home and worry about cooking, cleaning, and the like. I would argue that I quit my job to help him because I love him enough to do so, and he would almost throw it back in my face and say it was for us and that it was selfish of me to see it as a sacrifice on my part. Over the next few months, it's become easier. I've been the only one cooking, cleaning, parenting, and when I make a remark about how he leaves trash or a cup somewhere, he just tells me that I'm a stay-at-home. It shouldn't be hard for me. Just yesterday, he had knocked a tissue box on the floor off of his bedside table. I didn't pick it up all day because, honestly, I didn't even really notice it. But when he came home, he said, "Wow, you couldn't pick that up?" I just responded, "I'm not the one who knocked it off." He came back with, "You had all day to pick it up." I just ignored him because I wanted to scream. The littlest things like that are such triggers for me now, because I pick up after him all day, not to mention pick up and clean after his kids, and I just don't know what to say to him to make him understand that what I'm doing for him is a labor of love, literally. I'm getting to the end, I promise. I had 3 dogs that I kept inside before we got married, and I moved in. He didn't want my dogs inside. He doesn't like dog hair or dogs that much, so I reluctantly agreed. Those dogs were my world before we met. They all slept in my bed with me. I spent all my free time almost with them. I love them a lot. We keep them in the backyard. Their living conditions are fine, of course. But I felt bad because they had always been inside dogs for the most part. About a week ago, I went outside and found one of my dogs had died, and I was just a complete wreck. He was getting older, but nowhere near old enough to pass away from old age. We had guessed he may have had a heart attack or something. I cried endlessly. That was my baby, and I couldn't help but feel like if I hadn't kept them outside, then it wouldn't have happened. So, needless to say, I've been pretty upset since that happened. 2 nights ago, he makes a comment about how I've been having an attitude lately. In reality, I've just been upset and not wanting to argue with him over a little shoot. So I've been mostly just agreeing with him and doing whatever he asks and not saying anything. I make 3 meals a day, and then when he gets in bed, he wants another whole meal, so I make that too. If he needs something or wants something, I'm the one to get up and get it or do whatever it is, like turn the fan on, the AC up, get him a water. If I try to say anything, he just tells me I don't love him. He works and his back hurts, he's hungry, and I stay at home, so I shouldn't complain. The thing is, my job was easier than my life now, and he doesn't see it that way. He looks at it like he's doing me a favor by letting me stay home, but I see it as he needed me and I obliged out of love. Anyways, last bit. The same 2 nights ago, he had made some remark that I should be glad he doesn't wake me up to make him coffee at 4 a.m. when he goes to work. And I honestly forgot what I said back to him because I was just trying to ignore it because it was so stupid. And of course, he wakes me up yesterday, and I just get up and do it because I don't want to fight, because he would literally be mad at me if I didn't. So I make his coffee with the Keurig that takes 30 seconds and get back in bed, although I can't fall asleep again and I'm tired the rest of the day. And again, this morning, he wakes me up and I'm sitting here typing this. I have to get out of bed soon and get the girls ready and take the older one to school. I'm just at my wit's end because I don't know what to say to this man. I texted him as he drove away for work that we need to talk when he gets home. And he called me and said, "No, we talk right now." "Yes, sir." I told him no because I needed time to collect my thoughts, because every time I try to talk to him, I can never get all my words out. And he ends up just talking over me and saying I don't love him or something similar. When I got up to make his coffee today, I said, "Please, I won't be able to go back to sleep." He said, "Neither will I work all day." I told him that I work all day too. I almost broke down and cried, but I just didn't want to argue, so I got in bed and just lay there fuming. I don't know why he's making me get up and make his stupid coffee when he can just do it himself. I need some advice. What do I say to him to make him understand my point of view? I know this text post is all over the place, and I'm sorry. I really didn't have time to compose a coherent, put-together piece, and I've never posted before, as I said, but please, if you could give me some advice or insight, anything is appreciated. I just need to figure out what to say to him later when he comes home. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He is taking advantage of you and you are letting him. You are basically his mom maid now. He has made you believe it is normal. Please consider getting out of this marriage before you become a shell of a person. I think this will only head into an hurtful situation if it is not already. For your information, it is not normal to have to ask your spouse if you can buy a coffee. Also, I am so sorry this is happening to you. Please consider seeing a therapist as soon as possible, for yourself, not together. And tell a trusted family member friend what is happening. Comment 2. Wow. You are totally being taken advantage of. You need to go back to work. He needs to figure out childcare for his children. This is not your responsibility. You got caught up in love and did not take the time to truly get to know him. It is time to take back your life. Bring the dogs back inside, for goodness sake. It is your house and your dogs. He does not make the rules. Quite frankly, it is time to divorce him. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around to hear more of my saga. So, after that whole coffee mess, things took a turn for the worse. I thought I had seen the worst of it, but boy, was I wrong. The day after I sent that text to my husband about needing to talk, he came home with a look on his face that I couldn't quite place. It was a mix of anger and something else. Guilt, maybe? Before I could even get a word out, he dropped a news on me. He'd been laid off from his job, the job that he'd always held over my head, the one that justified his every demand. The atmosphere in the house shifted instantly. The power dynamic that had been so heavily skewed in his favor was suddenly up in the air. And as much as I wanted to feel for him, to be the supportive wife, resentment bubbled up inside me. Here I was, having given up my career, my independence, and now this. But that wasn't even the half of it. The next day, his ex-wife showed up at our door furious. Turns out, she'd been laid off too, and she was demanding to take the girls back. She claimed that since my husband was no longer working, the custody agreement needed to be reevaluated. I was stunned. I had grown to love those girls like they were my own, and the thought of them being ripped away from us was unbearable. In the midst of all this chaos, I found out something that made my blood run cold. My husband had been hiding debt, a lot of it. Credit cards maxed out, loans taken out against the house, you name it. He'd been living a lie, and now it was all crashing down around us. I was at a loss. I felt trapped in a life that was spiraling out of control. I had no job, no money of my own, and now potentially no family. The man I had married, the life I had chosen, it was all a sham. But I wasn't going to let it end like this. I took action. I reached out to my old boss and by some miracle managed to get my job back. It wasn't easy, swallowing my pride and asking for help, but it was necessary. I needed to regain some semblance of control over my life. With a steady income once again, I started to make plans. I couldn't stay in this marriage, not after everything that had come to light. I contacted a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was also the most freeing. As for my husband, he was forced to face the consequences of his actions. With no job and a mountain of debt, he had to sell the house. His ex-wife took custody of the girls, and he moved into a small apartment, a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. And me? I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece. It's not easy, and there are days when I feel overwhelmed by it all. But I'm finding strength I never knew I had. I'm standing on my own 2 feet, and for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to the future.